I think it's so important telling each other's stories. And like, I want you to know that like not everything that I put out do I agree with. And this isn't about me. This isn't about my point of view and pushing it down your throat. It's about opening up the conversation so that we can all connect. Because the forces of darkness try to keep people separated. Darkness is separation. There is no light in separation. And so when we're separate from each other and we're not communicating with each other, there's always going to be misunderstanding. There's always going to be hurt. There's always going to be pain. But when we come together and we tell our stories and we share our hearts, we don't always have to agree. We don't always have to agree on everything. We don't even have to agree on anything. But what we can agree on is that we are both here living a human experience and there's value in what we're saying. So I share these stories with you guys so that you can hear another side. This show is an immersive audio experience, which means that you should probably be wearing headphones or in your car listening to it loudly. Really, this is your time. It's for you. It's for you to listen to. And really, you can't do anything else while you're doing that. We're going to have a chat. We're going to talk. We're going to learn. We're going to grow. We're going to learn a bit from each other. And we're going to expand ourselves. So unplug, unwind, relax, here we go. I'm also not big on intros, so I'm not going to introduce these people. We're just going to go. If you want to know who they are and about them, read the description. Love it, like it, subscribe.
Space, but I have a question for you. I really want your insight on some things, especially considering like where you are in your journey. How do you perceive and process forgiveness?
Getting in a place where I was like so hard on people, so critical of others. It's life-changing. For me, it was life-changing. Forgiveness is the reason why.
Because I think unforgiveness has you crying. Unforgiveness has you in depression. Unforgiveness puts you in a place of like, should have been, could have been, da-da-da. You're living in the past. You're living in the past. You look back at the past. It's the past, it's past, it's past. But really, all there is now.
All there is now.
Welcome to Loving Kindness Every Day, where you will hear everyday language such as 4-letter, 5-letter, or words that your mother might call profanity. Please be advised. You know, I found it interesting that you mentioned a few things when you were telling me your story, because I felt compelled to ask you about faith, and then you kind of proceeded to tell me a little bit about your history, right? And then you kind of shared a bit about what a lot of people would call trauma, right? And then later you mentioned, well, healing, basically like a mental, dare I say, like healing of that trauma. And that's something that's actually come up in a lot of these conversations that I've been having with people, where I'm starting to realize, big or small, like we've all been through something that has been very traumatizing. And we can look at it, like we can look at like the Queen of England, where you take somebody like, you know, that, right? And say like, she's never had a hard day in her life, right? But like, we don't know what's going on behind those walls. We don't know what sort of verbal abuse that she had to suffer maybe when she was younger. We don't know what we don't really know what she thinks and what she feels and how that feels for her. We can go, oh, it's not as bad as, we can try to compare our little like hurt bag that we bring around with each other. Oh, yours wasn't as bad as mine. But like at the end of the day, it's how you feel inside, right? And I've noticed that a lot of people, and maybe it's something that you can educate me on, because you do talk to people who are outside on the street, you know, like sometimes I know people are probably sleeping rough or sleeping outside, and then maybe they're just regular people that you happen to just, you know, like be led spiritually to talk to. But correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people, it seems to me, are hurting and are having that same sort of requirement for healing that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because we were doing a outreach with another organization called Sunrise. So that's actually how this came about. That ministry basically goes out to hotels in different parts of Atlanta and delivers essentially breakfast. So you'll see people running on these hotels and different parts of Georgia with these red wagons full of breakfast and coffee. And it was originally intended to help with the trafficking situation that has really been bad here for a while. I think overall, I'm not sure how open that knowledge is to everybody, but yeah, it's kind of a big deal in Georgia, and so these hotels would be just perfect hiding grounds for having these women do what they do, and so we would just go out and try and just love on people, but also try to see if we could find women and help them kind of just transition out of that life. Particularly the women that end up coming out of the life and being able to sort of go through this transition time, and so that's part of what Sunrise provides. But I think your question really goes to like, why are so many people hurting like that?
In the scheme of things.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Supriya, like, that was one of the things I picked up at the retreat was they were not part of the retreat program, but it was just like a thing with the staff that they were doing where they had become cognizant of the amount of times that they were saying sorry that wasn't necessary.
Oh, yeah. Over apologizing.
Yeah, and just being like, and so they were doing this thing where when they would hear another person say sorry, they would pretend like if you have a cat and you could like spray it with water, they'd be like, tss, tss, and they're like, oh yeah, I did it again, and so I kind of picked up on it, and I was like, geez, then I would hear myself later, obviously doing it with other people. Oh, sorry, this, da 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 da. And I'm like, why? Like, you're not sorry. You're not sorry. Well, number one, I think anytime you say I am and then it's followed by something, you're literally calling out the divine because you're speaking that I am presence over yourself. So like, I am sorry. What does sorry mean? No, like low and like it's almost like this little weaselly thing. Like, true. Like, I'm not sorry. I'm not a sorry person. If I do something wrong, I do apologize.
Yeah.
And I recognize that I've made a mistake, and I apologize, and, hopefully I'm going to try not to do it again. If I make a mistake, then I might maybe be a little sorry or something, whatever. But I just think that advocating for yourself and self-compassion and those types of things are actually the most important, because when you do advocate for yourself and you do have self-compassion, then naturally, I feel at least, you're also more compassionate and understanding of others.
Yeah. You got it. Class dismissed. You got it. No, that's really it. That's literally it, because I found myself in my lowest space emotionally, major depression, like untreated, off the charts, no therapy, no meds, no nothing, just sitting in a place where I was like so hard on people, so critical of others. And then you come to a place where you become more compassionate, not perfectly, but more compassionate for yourself, less critical of yourself, and it makes it easier for you to connect with people. I used to be such a stickler for like time. Don't waste my time and be on time. I can give two shits about that now. When people are quote unquote late, unless it's like an event that I know I have a start and end time, I'm always early for those things. I'm extra like that. But generally speaking, if it's something, and even with that, I still be trying to extend a little grace. It's like, people late, it's whatever. Life is happening,
Legitimately, yeah.
So, but for me, I was using that as like a coping mechanism. It's like, because there were so many elements and things I could not control in my life, and so like I can control whether or not I arrive on time, and I expect people that are connected to me and that want to be in the same space with me to honor that, and they be on time too. And I would like drag people, for being late, like horribly. Like I was telling my friend the other day that there's somebody that I went to school with that it's 20 years later, but I would love to have a conversation with her to apologize for how I operated back then as it relates to time. Because I basically was like, you ain't shit because you late. Which is so unnecessary, and I meant that with my whole chest, wholeheartedly back then. But a more mature and healed version of me is like, I don't know what she had going on behind the scenes. I don't know what mental headspace she was in. I know she was a lot like me and carried a lot of burdens for her family. that she was the one first generational college student and, you know, blazing the trail, carrying the torch for other people. That's a lot of weight for like a 20-year-old, you know, 21-year-old. Like, and so like seeing it through that lens of like not just empathy, but like compassion and kindness, and looking at it like, ooh, I need to find her and apologize. You know, like seeing it from that place or space. But I have a question for you. I really want your insight on some things, especially considering like where you are in your journey. How do you perceive and process forgiveness?
Interesting. How do I perceive and process forgiveness?
Or just like, what does it mean to you in general?
For me to forgive others, or for others forgiving me, or which just in general, yeah.
Either way.
Yeah. My first thing is that I recognize forgiveness is for me and it's never for anybody else. For a long time, I held on to a lot of bitterness and a lot of like, they did this to me and rawr and all this kind of stuff. And I then I suppose I kind of came to the point where I realized like nobody really cared. Like, nobody really cares when your feelings are hurt. Like, they really don't. And so then you can either walk around with your hurt feelings and be angry with them in unforgiveness, because that's what that is. It's you being angry or upset, but something that somebody else did or didn't do, right? And really experiencing pain through that. Or you can just recognize that they did this thing to you and let it go. And just let it be. I think I went through that a lot, you know, with my brother and the case, and kind of feeling like I don't know, I guess it's just like a decision, like, why does it matter anymore? When people do these things, like, even actively, just interpersonal relationships and things like that. Like, people have done things to me where I could be really bitter, and I could choose to be really like, well, that was wrong, and they shouldn't have done this, and da-da-da-da, but I don't know, at the end of the day, I guess I feel like a little bit like Jesus, where it's like, he who's without sin cast the first stone. Like, have I ever been capable of doing something that's even the smallest amount similar? For example, I could pick up this whole bowl and just like punch you in the face with it, right? For argument's sake. And it could be very extreme. But also at the same time, you can say to yourself, well, I have also maybe slapped somebody or done something that's a very smaller version of it, right? And so I guess if you're willing to accept that inside of you is the ability, not necessarily that you would do it, because like, oh, I wouldn't do that. No, I'm not saying you would do it, but the ability to do it, if you have the ability to do it,
that part,
then I think you can recognize that the other person exercised that ability that they had, and also that they must have inside of them probably a deeper hurt or a deeper problem, and that the issue isn't you, that it's actually them.
Yeah.
And so for me, with forgiveness, I have really sort of captured and grabbed the fact that me forgiving somebody or being magnanimous is the kindest thing I can do to myself. Legitimately. That's how I feel.
I love that.
I feel like, to sum it up, I feel like forgiveness is self-kindness, self-compassion, not allowing someone else to press your buttons, take the button of your remote control and press your feelings, because I've opened up this consciousness that, like, your thoughts dictate your feelings. So therefore, if I think about something that somebody harming me, and I stay in that cycle of the harming me, then my feelings then are going to get hurt. It's like how you said, it's like, it wasn't this that did it, but it was that hurt feeling, right?
Right.
And I can stay there, and I can keep going every morning. I can wake up and I can go right there. Boom. They did this. Boom, I'm in pain. They did this. I'm in pain. Or I can go, you know what? That happened, but I'm not going to think about it anymore. I can even, sometimes I think it's very helpful to go full circle the other way. Oh, they didn't mean that. They weren't actually even trying to do anything to me.
Right.
Or like, is their problem that mine? Whatever way you want to think of it that makes you feel better. For me, sometimes it's like, it goes from between like total denial, like that didn't happen, or like it just, like that they didn't mean that, or whatever, like everybody loves me, only good things happen to me, and just stay in that.
Right.
And then in that it brings good feelings, and then that brings good joys, it brings joy. And then I think in that you can even exercise what you were saying about the boundaries, where you're like, I'm in joy, I'm in happiness. If you want to hang out over here and you want to be that person who hangs out over here, then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to exit stage left.
Yeah.
I'll see you later. God bless you. But I'm not going to sit up all night and cry about it anymore.
Sure.
Because I think unforgiveness has you crying. Unforgiveness has you in depression. Unforgiveness puts you in a place of like, should have been, could have been, da-da-da. You're living in the past. You're living in the past. You're looking back at the past. It's the past, it's past, it's past. Where really, all there is now. There is never going to be... There's never going to be anything different. When you get home and you drive home, you're going to be in the now. You can live there now. You can go, oh, what if that and what if this? And you can live in the anxiety or whatever of this person hurting me again or doing that to me again or da-da-da. But at the end of the day, like, it's all about self-preservation. It's all about, like, staying in the now and staying in the moment and staying grounded. And I think that for me, long-winded answer is just forgiveness is the best thing that I can do for myself.
I love that. I don't think it's long-winded at all. I think all of that was, like, so... like valid and warranted as it relates to it, because I think people simplify forgiveness too much. They'll be like, well, you just forgive because blah blah, and I'm like, no, bro, that hasn't been my journey with it. Like it really is for you. It really is a process. I love how you said forgiveness for me is self-compassion and self-kindness. I never thought about it like that, but it makes so much sense, because I do absolutely resonate with the forgiveness is for me, not for you. Forgiveness is one of the things that I just discovered years ago through this really great book by Gary Chapman. It was just that forgiveness is a daily walk, and I never thought about it like that before in my life. It was like when I read that sentence, I was just like, the sentence was, forgiveness is a choice. And it's something you have to choose every day. And I was like, well, damn, why aren't they teaching it like that in church, But it really is, because we teach, like, it's taught from a religious standpoint, or even a worldly view. Forgiveness is taught like you forgive the act.
Like you're doing a favor for somebody else.
You're doing a favor, and you're forgiving an act or action and not the person per se, if that makes sense. Like, I'm forgiving you despite the fact that you did fill in the blank.
XYZ.
Right. So we present it like, and not like forgiveness is what it is, which I feel like it's reconciliation, not to be confused with restoration. So sometimes, like, reconciliation is like finding it really just means finding the balance, coming to a place of peace with something. It doesn't have, so that's, for me, that's always my default goal regarding forgiveness. Is it worth holding on to this energy? Because at the end of the day, what's going to facilitate peace for me? If it doesn't facilitate peace, I'm through with it. Restoration is often what people, even I, like human beings, we often want restoration. So the relationship went horrible. If you forgive me, why can't we get back together? Right? But the reality is, all relationships or connections won't be restored to their former nature, but it doesn't mean that you can't reconcile the experience and what has happened. You can come to peace with that thing, choose to release it for the sake of your own healing, and not being and sitting in a place of like bitterness and anger and rancor and all of that, but coming to a place where you almost like radically accept what has happened or how the people choose to be or operate, and then walk through that each day. So I'm fine with it in this moment. Okay, I forgive them. I'm fine with it in this moment. And then you wake up mad the next day. You got to choose to forgive every day.
Yeah.
You literally got to choose to forgive every day. It was just a very interesting concept. Like learning that concept in that way for me was so different. But I appreciated it. Like I had never been taught it's for me, and you just validated that and confirmed that. Until I read that book, what was it, like 14 years ago or so, 14, 15 years ago, like I had never heard that terminology. I had never understood like it was a choice quite in that way. But sitting in a space where also helping people understand that forgiveness is, like it's a choice, but it's also, it's also something we choose to do daily, but it's also something that's required of us to do with ourselves, because people like Amber Rose had made she went viral recently for saying this thing about like she's totally fine hating people that that have wronged her, and that we're taught that we should forgive, but she's also a proclaimed atheist. She said, I'm totally okay with hating people that have done me wrong, or it's not making me feel bad. I'm totally okay having hate in my heart, despite people saying, like if you forgive the person, it's to help you. She was just like, it makes no big difference to me. And I was like laughing, but it's like I get what she was saying. But to me, holding on to that hate is still energy.
For sure.
And I'm just not, it's why for me, forgiveness is a goal to a certain degree, because I'm not about to invest that type of energy into it. Now, one thing that me and my sister have often had this debate, because she just doesn't understand the concept, which is weird, but I'm like, girl, forgiving someone doesn't mean, and the joke that I often say is the F in forgiveness doesn't mean I fuck with you. So I forgive and release a lot of people. I forgive you. Ain't no hate in my heart, no animosity. If I see you, we gonna be cordial and cool. Are we hanging out? Are we friends? Are we whatever? Nah. But there's no hate there. It's just I came to an understanding that we're not a fit for one another, whether it's as friends, romantic partners, business partners, whatever the situation may have been, that job no longer a fit for me, whatever it is. And where there was some sadness and disappointment and anger there, eventually I had to release that for the sake of myself, just like you were saying. So, but here it is. I forgive you, your bad behavior, even though I brought it to your attention several times and you kept up the bullshit. I forgive you, but on the back end, is our relationship restored to its former nature? Absolutely not. People need to stop this religious bullshit of saying forgive and forget. First of all, how are you going to tell me don't forget when my body and brain have recorded the trauma that I've experienced? So how can you literally tell people that? You can't. I mean, you can say it, but it's stupid. But saying like, oh, just forget about it. No, I can't forget it because I got night terrors. I have PTSD. I have major depressive disorder. My anxiety's through the roof. I don't even trust myself. I have issues with food, relationships with people. It's in my DNA, and you're sitting here telling me to forgive and forget it. So, as it relates to, for instance, like people still have a hard time believing how I've forgiven my mother. And I'm like, I forgive her, but that ass still get checked, even lovingly. Like the fact that she persists in bad behavior, I literally have to make the choice to forgive her pretty much every encounter that I have with her. And I'd be like, she know better, but I'm still gonna forgive you for the sake of like dealing with me, and I'm gonna continue to hold my boundaries because I know at the end of the day, that's my peace matters most. You just,
I think maybe there's a value in forgiving forward. People, like you said, people say forgive and forget. And no, I think, like you said, everything you said is very valid. Like we know the body keeps a score. We know that the limbic system has recorded it. We know all of these things. So it's like there's no point in saying forget about it because
stupid to me. I'm sorry.
You know what I mean?
I don't have other language for it. I'm sorry.
That's just, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It just doesn't even make sense. But I do think there's a value in forgiving forward. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is saying, okay, fine. Like you said, I'm not choosing to forgive this act. I'm choosing to forgive the person. And I'm going to, for me, for myself, for the person who's forgiving, I'm going to choose to move forward in my thinking and not allow the emotions from the action to really bother me. Because I think that each time, I guess that's why I said forgiveness is for you, is like, I feel like each time I go back to like, people don't care. Like the person who bothered you, the person who that you're like holding the unforgiveness for, actually doesn't give a fuck. And so then you're the only person who's bothered. So if you're the only person who's bothered, and you're the only person who can free yourself. It is
freedom and forgiveness. It really is to me. Like, I have a situation, like, long story medium, where it was like a friend of mine that did something really horribly to like betray me years ago, and like pulled other people into it. It was college, but it was so high school. That's what's crazy about the shit. But anyway, she literally called me. You have someone else that knows me, call me, and says she want to speak to you.
High school, okay. Yeah.
It's given high school. And I was just like, okay, whatever. Mind you, my phone number ain't changed, so I'm like, okay, whatever. But she gets on the phone, and her first word, knowing all the stuff she's done to me, knowing how her actions sent me in a mental health spiral, this bitch says, we good? I can't make this shit up. We good? And I said, excuse? Like, I was like, excuse me? I literally said, excuse me? And she said, we good. I said, is that really what you have to say to me in this moment? And she was just like, yeah, I just want to move forward. And I said, I have moving forward. I haven't talked to you in 7-8 years. But what you're not gonna do is come back with a lack of apology and a lack of accountability and act like we just gonna pretend as if nothing happened. Hell no. So when you're ready to have an adult conversation about how your childhood trauma impacted your behaviors 20-something years later, we can talk. But until then, don't come at me like we good, because we not. Though I have forgiven you, we're not friends anymore. Though I loved you, you don't hold space in my heart like that anymore. And it wouldn't even be wisdom for me to allow you back in by forgetting what you have done. Mm. And she was just like, I didn't think it was going to be all of that, but okay.
Yeah, I know that's valid.
It is, because it wouldn't even be wisdom. That's why when people like forget, how? When the person is still trash, why would I allow you back into my space in the trusted space like this? Because again, you don't, especially if it's a situation where you're not remorseful at all. You don't think you've done anything wrong.
I guess for me, I don't really care for them in that sense, because again, I recognize that they don't give a shit. So right. I don't care.
You're right, though. You're so right.
Because they don't care. Because she didn't care. Because you good?
We good.
She don't give a fuck. So
you're so right.
So I'm just like, you don't care. You don't care that you hurt me. I'm only hurting myself by looking for your acknowledgement. And I guess that's the only, that's the part that changes for me a little bit, where it's like, I don't actually care if you acknowledge it. I don't care if you apologize. I mean, you can apologize. That feels nice.
Yeah,
everybody likes it.
Care.
You know, everybody likes the apology. You know what I mean? But like, at the same time,
sometimes you're just not gonna get it.
I feel like it's, I don't want to say selfish, but also at the same time, I do. I want to be like, it's the most selfish and self-centered and positive, but in like a positive way, because selfish has a negative connotation and self-centered also has a negative connotation. But I feel like it's this sense of putting yourself first by forgiving people and actually not being affected by their attitude about your forgiveness. I actually don't care how you feel about it. That's good. If you're remorseful, that's great. If you're not remorseful,
no skin off my teeth.
So being almost like completely detached from it and just solely doing it from you,
it's
and
all
detaching
about me.
Everything concerning them.
Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter at all to you really how other people feel.
Yeah.
Do their feelings really, truly matter? Not really.
If we're honest,
Yeah. So it's like, if my feelings are the only thing that matters to me, and I'm the only person who's really going to advocate for my own self and my own feelings, then why do I care about your feelings about my feelings?
It make sense now. You preaching. No, that makes sense when you think about it. Because honestly, until that moment, like I said, even now, like I have forgiven her. I have forgiven her, and I hadn't thought about it. And I was just like, whatever. And I wasn't trying to restore the relationship, so it was just like, cool. We passed each other at like homecoming or something like that, and it's like, hey, we done. Nothing else to discuss.
For sure.
But until that phone call came, and honestly, it triggered me. Your ass acting like it's all good. It woke up something in me that was like, bitch, you tried it, that kind of situation. And I was just like, no. But you're right. I mean, because honestly, for days I reeled over that shit after that phone call, and it was like she was still getting certain aspects of my energy. But then after that, I had come back to the place where I was like, I just need to release her and release her for good. Now, honestly, I know her spirit, so I had no expectation for her ever to call me back with an apology, or to ever want to call back and be a mature person and call. And no, I already knew that wasn't going to happen, but I was just putting, to some degree, like a boundary in place to let her know this is the requirement for you to even think about contacting me again, right? That kind of situation. But generally speaking, I love your approach to that, because I've had to do that aspect a lot for like my abusers, because I'm never gonna get, all of them are dead except my mom. Well, no, one of them is still alive. 3 of them are still alive. But the other like 4 are alive, but are just deceased. But it's like, I'm never gonna get an apology for them. Not that I even know I wanted it, right? Some people want that, but I don't know that I even desired it, if I'm honest. I don't want nothing to do with your ass at all, with most of these people. But just looking at it from a place of like, some people are just never going to get the apology, even if they do want one. And you have to kind of sit in a space where you're releasing these people for the sake of your own healing and self-preservation and protection. And like you said, self-kindness. Like, why am I sitting here torturing myself over some shit you did? It really almost low-key is like staying in that place of that lacks forgiveness is like a byproduct of shame.
Yes, and like you're losing all your power, because when you tell your story about,
you're giving it away.
Yeah, because like you tell a story about your friend in your phone call, it really resonated with me, because it reminded me of, I think it was the last time I spoke to my brother, my abuser, and like I'll have to restate that. I don't like my abuser. It sounds too personal. I want to say my brother, the abuser. We'll call it that. Mm-hmm. And it was very similar, where his baby was born and he's texting me kind of like trying to pretend like nothing happened. And I had actually had an apology from him years before, some weird cryptic, I'm sorry for all the stuff that happened when we were kids, shorty, kind of crap or whatever. But like, mom thinks you're gay because of it and all this trash, and I'm just like, okay, Lord. Jesus, okay. And so like,
of course they do.
I don't think she thinks that now anyway, but like, we have a good relationship now, my mom and I, but at the time, things were, I kind of blamed him. I kind of blamed him for our relationship, and I blamed him for a lot of things, and I was really upset, honestly. I was very in a lot of unforgiveness, even though I recognized that I had to forgive him for myself. Maybe like, now this happened, I think it's 2021, so I feel like since 2017, I kind of was on this journey of like trying to forgive, if that makes sense, right? And I'm like, I know I have to. I know I need to. And like every day I'm trying to, but it just felt like walking through the muck and the mire.
I ain't feeling this shit.
But it felt difficult. It felt like walking through the muck and the mire. And I guess like I got to this point where, and I want to even even say it could have been one of the Supriya sort of like discussions that we had, where I was listening to somebody else talk about how they were abused and an abuser, and I kind of was like realizing like, okay, look, inside of my humanity, do I have the possibility to be the way that he is and the way that I am? Yes, sure, whatever. But like, I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, I just got to this point where I was just like, I wish I could tell you specifically, but there was just so much freedom in just letting it go.
An awakening.
Yes.
That's what my pastor calls it.
I did.
An awakening.
I definitely had an awakening, and before it, I also had a dying. I did.
Well, it's a requirement.
I had to die. I did. I really did. And I'm glad that I died off, and I'm glad that died off, because I was so sad all the time. And I was so consumed in feeling wronged. But this happened to me. But that, and so it's like, I think that I kind of got power from letting it go. And not in that sense of like, let go, let God trash, but like really just being like, you know what? This happened, but I don't have to live in it. And I don't have to let you have power over me. Right. And if everybody wants to be on your side and all this kind of, because like, yourself with the family and the whole thing. And unfortunately, for the people who don't know, a lot of times when there's sexual abuse in a family, the family tends to go with the side of the abuser and not the side of the quote-unquote victim. Yeah.
Every time.
Really, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which is something I learned. And I think there was also power in that. It was power in learning that I wasn't alone, once again, which is why I want to share these stories. Power in learning that I wasn't alone. And there was power in learning and freedom, really, in not giving a fuck about them and what they do and what they think and how they feel about my feelings, and also speaking. Because I told the prosecutor when I'd let the case go, because she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, also at the same time, though, I'm going to be talking about this. Because, like I feel like y'all didn't do your job, which was to keep him away from children. So, like, that's where I'm at. And I just don't be surprised when you hear about it. That's all I'm saying, And that's how I felt about it at the time. And that's how I still feel about it. But also at the same time, the difference between me back then and now is that, like, I don't wake up every morning thinking about it. And I don't have to like pull myself out of bed, and I don't have to think about his thoughts or what he did or any of that kind of stuff anymore, because like it doesn't make me feel good. And I like to go with what feels good. I like it. I like feeling good. I like feeling happy. I like focusing on things that feel good and feel happy. And don't be mad, but I'm gonna quote the Bible, and I'm gonna say, no, I'm just joking because you were. I'm just joking because before you were like. But I'm gonna be like, for real, I stand with Paul. There's a lot of things Paul said I don't agree with. A lot of things Paul said I don't agree with.
Ain't he?
There's a lot of things, for the record, a lot of things Paul said that I don't agree with. And actually, they're not the gay things, for the record. There's not the gay things that I don't agree with. It was sexism. It wasn't even that. It was that. It was all that. It was all of that each time for me. But what he does say is focus, like the things he tells you, the things to think about. Think about things that are noteworthy and praiseworthy and good and a good report and uplifting and positive. And I'm like, when I think about those things, when I put my mind on those things, because it tells you keep your mind stayed on those things. So when I think about those things, I feel good and I feel happy. When I think about all the stuff back then and what you did to me and this or that and the next thing, I don't feel so good. Yeah. And so I think I came out of that from, I suppose maybe that feeling was really what started the forgiveness. It kind of came full circle in like a little figure eight where I was just like, I'm going to stay on things that feel good and not focus on things that don't feel good. And then by that, more and more things feel good to the point where I'm just like, okay, you know what? I can go back and I could look at that in a different way. Yeah. And I can choose to reframe things in a different way. And this way feels good. And this way feels positive. And this way feels encouraging. And this way feels in a way that I could actually talk to that lady that I told you about that I met at the police station. And I could tell her and encourage her without crying and breaking down. To be like, hey, look, I'm sorry that this happened to you, but also at the same time, and I said to her, I was like, I'm a survivor of somebody who came from a house where things weren't safe. I think that's what I said to her. I said, just so you can kind of understand where I'm coming from, And again, I didn't say it's going to be okay, but I was just like, and like,
you're not alone.
Yeah.
I think that's what you told me.
Legitimately. Like, I said, so I can't remember what I said to her, but I was just like, and I guess realizing that And also this experience that I had at the park down the street where I walked, a homeless man asked me for some shorts, and by the time I went back to house, got the shorts, he was literally actively raping someone in the park when I go to bring him the shorts. And I have to like stop that from happening. And I was like, at that time, you know, wow. I had this conversation with another homeless lady who was out there, and she was pregnant, and she was basically telling me how she had been abused, and that's how she ended up pregnant, and all these kind of things. And I was like, man, you know, like, people don't talk enough. There's so many bad things that are happening literally every day, and nobody's talking about it. And because nobody's talking about it, everybody thinks that they're the victim and they're the only one. Mm-hmm. And I think that even in those experiences where I was like, geez, like, and I was able to talk to people without breaking down and crying and feeling all these kind of ways, or like, listen, you could tell me all these bad things that happen to you, and I'm going to be listening to it like you're telling me about the Oreos you ate. It's not going to affect me. Mm-hmm. But before, you know, I would have maybe been affected, and a lot of other people, maybe they're affected by it. But I think it's, you know, like I said, just to kind of like sum it all together, I think that it's, at the end of the day, the Supriya thing. It's the self-compassion. It's the most compassionate thing that I can do for my brain, because that's all that matters. Is I feel like we're all living in a single occupancy apartment. Mm-hmm. You have a partner, you don't have a partner, either way, everybody's alone either way. Like, you're going to be alone either way. So you're going to either be happy in your skin, or you can be looking at everybody else for validation and hope that they do whatever, and if they don't treat you right, then you're upset. And it's kind of like it's like giving everybody else the ability to control you. And I'm like, you're not gonna control me.
It really is. And I definitely thought about it that. I've even told people that before, like, you just allowing them to like control you and manipulate you. I guess I'm processing that information differently in this time, but I still love how the freshness for me of what you said about the self-kindness, the self-compassion being like such key pieces of forgiveness, and like allowing that, because you really are right. At the end of the day, like, people just don't give a fuck, because everybody's living in their own little bubble and just trying to get through, survive, and press and push like everybody else. And some people just don't have the capacity for it. But I'm with you on that. I often have to tell people, me not being emotional in a moment, what you feel should be demonstrative, crying and weeping of somebody being emotional, it doesn't mean that I don't care. And it's not like I'm trying to hold back tears per se. It's just like, for who I am and what I do, I can't be crying every single second, you know, trying to effectively help someone navigate their own crisis. It's giving self-centered, you know, like, and so if we're called to do this work, you sit in a space where you're like, oh, I'm grateful for the dimension of healing that allows me to, that gives me space of my body knowing what to do when it needs to. And so I may get in my car later or come home later, hell, a week later, a month later, and weep about the situation I saw in the park or at a store or whatever. But in that moment, just being able to hold space for that person and help them get connected to the resources and services that they need, knowing what it's like to be without, you know, knowing what it's like to be kind of on the limb, solo dolo. So, but that forgiveness piece as a whole is like, it's life-changing. For me, it was life-changing. Forgiveness is the reason why I have a low-contact relationship with my mother, because what I did after forgiveness was, I remember literally just like in prayer and meditation time, or probably both, who knows, sitting there, and I heard the term radical acceptance. I had never heard the term before. And this was like a decade ago. And this was like years after the forgiveness understanding and like studying it in that book by Gary Chapman. So I was like, radical acceptance. And then I realized, oh, that's what I have to do with my mom. And that's why we have the semblance of the relationship that we have now. It's because I radically accept her for who she is, even if she doesn't accept herself. I know who the hell she is. She ain't never gonna change. She's choosing to be the same and stay the same. She's literally told me out of her mouth, I'm too old to change now. I've been hearing that for 20 years. I'm too old to change now, right? And so I have to radically accept who you are, flaws and all, just like to some degree I probably want somebody to love and accept me radically for who I am, flaws and all. And choose to say, yes, I want you to be a part of my life, and tailor and mold what that looks like, or just release it all together and be like, okay, cool, I'm done. I choose not to accept it. There's no wrong answer. Do what works best for you. But that forgiveness and partnership with radical acceptance, some people say they can't be separated. I don't agree. But, because like I'm not about to radically accept that somebody's a pedophile. I'm not about to do this shit. I don't know how this, I radically accept it, but I'm not about to like build a relationship with you. That's not, you know what I'm saying? Like that's not about to happen. But generally speaking, it's a very interesting like concept, and I'm always just curious to hear like great minds like yours and what people's personal journey and experience has been with forgiveness, because I tell people that forgiveness is just like God and the creator. Honey, you got to build a relationship with that thing, and it's something that you have to experience. It's not a concept or definition that I could just tell you. What has been your experience with forgiveness, and what does it look like for you on your healing journey? It's so different for everybody, which is just how the creator is. It's so different for everybody. As multidimensional as we are, even the Bible talks about to Abraham, God is like, as many grains of sand are on the earth, is how many, you'll be the father of that many nations, right? That's how complicated and complex we are as human beings. And so in that same regard, it's that many definitions of forgiveness. It's that many definitions of healing. And so we just have to look at it through that lens and always be having conversations, like you said, about this, because so many of our experiences intersect and are parallel, but yet there are so many distinct, like unique differences about each one too, that in conversations like this helps contribute to the healing or advancement of another person.
Each time you come to listen to this podcast, it will be different. We'll have some interesting discussions about a vast variety of topics. But at the end of the day, this podcast is about bettering ourselves from within ourselves. It's about personal accountability. It's about thoughts. It's about training your thoughts to dictate your reality. It's about realizing the power of your own thinking, understanding your personal power and activating it.
And the unbroken story has never served anybody.
Just remember, it's never too late to take a deep breath and start your day all over again.
Everything is okay. Everything is alright. Everything is going to be okay, and everything is going to be alright. Choose to believe that. Choose to see it as so. See yourself happy. See yourself smiling. See yourself surrounded by love. Change your mind. Change your reality joyfully, happily to others. Change your thoughts. Change your life. You're loved so dearly. God loves you so specifically and appreciates you, especially since you're listening to this. How do you even find this? Yeah. Listen, I love you. I want you to have a beautiful night, or day, or morning, or afternoon, or evening, and good night. Don't forget to like us and subscribe.
This is the most successful podcast that has ever existed. I thank you for that.